And welcome back to CoinDesk Live. I'm Pete Rizzo, editor at CoinDesk. We're here in CoinDesk studios in New York. Today, Facebook goes to Washington, where the first of two hearings is concluded in the U.S. Congress about Facebook and its cryptocurrency ambitions. But we're bringing you interviews in the studio all afternoon, kind of unpack the play-by-play, bring you the idea of what the experts in the industry think the implications are for this event, for your pocketbook, and for the industry at large. So to my right, Mr. Jake Benson is a longtime industry entrepreneur, CEO and founder of Lukka, a comprehensive tax tool for calculating capital gains taxes for cryptocurrency. Welcome, Jake.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Jake, obviously been around in a lot of the cryptocurrency world for a while, seen a lot of
Five
things.
and a half years now.
Yeah. So did you, maybe just high level, did you think you would see a Facebook coin? Does that, how have you wrapped your head around that concept?
Never at all. Now, I've always been pretty excited about corporate coins, and so I've always theorized that most major corporations one day will have their own coin, similar to most major corporations eventually made their own website. So it's not a surprise to me that inevitably corporations are going after creating their own tokens, but for Facebook to be one of the first big ones is pretty much a surprise. Going back 5 years, I would have never guessed. Would have never guessed. If I were to pick, let's say you have the FANGs, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I would have easily said out of all of those, Facebook might be the last. It's far more obvious to think of, Amazon or Google launching their own coin, but Facebook is definitely a little bit counterintuitive. But here we are.
Yeah. So I think one of the questions that people have coming back to, the senator is really harping on Facebook. What's the business model? As you look at something like a Libra, what do you see?
Well, look, you've got the traditional business models. Once you create a payment network, then obviously you can take fees, and there's pretty significant margins on payment network fees when you look at Visa and MasterCard and American Express. So if you can create an even bigger network and lower the fees, well, there, boom, you can make some money.
So you think this is a way for old financial guard to have some sort of stake in cryptocurrency?
Well, that's potentially one thing. I think maybe that's the most obvious one. But I do think when you introduce cryptocurrencies, you actually do enable room for business model innovation in and of itself. So you could speculate all sorts of different things. Is there, underlying data business to all this? Could you give payments for free? And is there a different way to monetize? And I think there's really anything is possible in terms of new business models, and I can totally understand why the regulators are uncomfortable with that. And I would imagine that even Facebook itself only has a drawing board of business models right now. You get into a situation though where the thing is mass adopted, and you innovate from there. What you do first is get a beachhead of activity, and then you figure out how to monetize. Just like Facebook did once before. Just get adoption, just get users, and then figure out how to monetize it. So I got to believe their primary objective at this point in their own mission here is just to do what it takes to get adoption, and then figure out the business model from there. There's some obvious ones, but then there could be some really creative ones as well.
So as you look at the white paper, as you look at the code that's come out, is Facebook a cryptocurrency to you? Is that the correct terminology we should be using around Libra? Great question.
Well, almost everybody defines it somewhat differently.
Sure.
All right. So
very
I guess for me though, I'm going to ask: is it blockchain based? Yeah, it's blockchain based technology. Okay, so it satisfies that requirement. Is it perfectly decentralized or absolutely decentralized? Well, not to the same extent that Bitcoin and Ethereum are, but I don't necessarily that is a requirement of the definition of cryptocurrency. Does it involve signing of private and public keys? Yeah, so it's close enough to a cryptocurrency, but it's certainly not a pure cryptocurrency in its original form of pure decentralization, but I'll call it a cryptocurrency. Yeah.
How has Facebook changed the conversations that you're having in a business setting?
Well, you have seen this ripple throughout the entire world. You have a massive company like Facebook now getting into it, and I saw one massive ripple, which came when Fidelity announced that They were allowing buying and sell of Bitcoin, and that sent waves through the industry. This was a signal that, all right, this isn't really a sandbox anymore. Other big incumbents need to start preparing for their own methods and operations in order to be able to interface with this brand new world. Their own customers are going to have this on the balance sheet, so we better prepare, like it or not. And the same is true with Facebook now. This is sending ripples throughout the entire industry, and it's hard to question whether or not, is crypto going to be a thing? Well, you've got billions of users right now through Facebook's platform that may have this on the balance sheet, and 25 million investment accounts from Fidelity that will have this on the balance sheet. So it's just yet another very, very, very big signal, and that in general just raises all level of conversation.
Do you think Facebook can be as regulatory compliant with this coin as they want to be? I know you started your startup as in order to offer compliant services to what was an open source network, right? So you can't build everything yourself. Is Facebook being over ambitious here by saying that they're going to satisfy all concerns?
Well, look, they have to. If this project is going to be successful, I think they absolutely have to satisfy minimum requirements. But I would also believe that the onus is on them to sort of demonstrate that there's additional level of controls and transparency that might be benefits of cryptocurrency that maybe weren't even possible before on previous payment networks. My hypothesis with crypto has always been since day one is, all right, so the anonymous aspect of crypto is pretty scary for a regulator. But when you break down what crypto is and it's a public ledger, there's actually aspects and qualities of a crypto network that lend itself to new ways of transparency and real-time monitoring. So if Facebook pulls this off, I think they might actually be able to demonstrate to regulators that these new next generation networks that are blockchain based offer up brand new methods and modes of transparency and regulatory control. Now that's not easy because crypto's often associated with nefarious activity, but this really is an important moment, and that's probably at the crux of what they're trying to pull off right now is can they convince regulators that this isn't a scarier new future. This could actually be a more compliant future. But again, that's not easy, and especially given the reputation of Facebook in the past, having challenges with privacy, they're facing an uphill battle. But I hats off to that team for almost having to turn their business model upside down and now pitch that privacy is at the top of the agenda here. So I'm optimistic in that regard, or at least somebody, if it's not Facebook, it's somebody, one of these big corporates needs to actually push the agenda that crypto networks, blockchain-based networks offer up a better future rather than a scarier one, because they really can from a technical level. From a raw technical level, the transactions are there. They can be audited in real time. That's promising, not scary, in my opinion.
So are you a Facebook user still to this day?
I have a Facebook account, but as the years have gone by, I'm less and less, posting things on Facebook. But yeah, I'm still a Facebook user.
And I guess your own personal cryptocurrency habits. I know we met back in the day, 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
Are you an avid cryptocurrency user these days?
Yeah. So I have various different cryptos that I hold. I don't trade because it's a distraction for me. I have a business to run, and if I get into trading, that's going to take my time and attention away from what matters most. But no, it'd be crazy for me not to have some investments in crypto.
Yeah, I guess curious because I just think Facebook is such a big monolith, right? There's something that touches all of us and everyone has an opinion on it. I guess what are you hearing from people who, obviously your friends, family, understand that you're in the cryptocurrency business? What do they think about Libra?
They're just asking questions like, "Wow, should I use this? Should I invest in it? Should I be afraid of this?" The entire spectrum of possible questions are coming. Some misguided, but
What's the worst question you've gotten?
What's the worst question? Well, is this Facebook's new method for spying on all of my payments? I think that's a lot of people's gut reaction to this, because of privacy concerns with their core platform. So again, that's the uphill battle that Facebook has. Now, that doesn't mean though that if I already have a Facebook account and boom, all of a sudden someday I've got 50 Libra sitting in there and I get some discount at some merchant, that I'm not going to spend it. So there's still trust barriers that they're going to have to overcome, even at the user level, much less the regulatory level. But at the end of the day, if this currency gets into the hands of people will spend it because it's value. I don't know which mechanisms that they're going to use to place this into the hands of users, but they'll find a way. Their coverage is so broad, so I don't doubt that they'll be able to reach a very large mass of the population in terms of spending activity. So that's how I see it.
Interesting. So once again, taking questions, Facebook and Periscope, if you're watching. So as you look at the landscape of tech giants, do you think that, there's this been sort of, as you mentioned, the FANGs earlier, maybe more will come. Is there one, I guess, how do you think they're watching these hearings this week?
So, Facebook now among those giants or whales, whatever you want to call them, is kind of the first mover. So they're the trailblazers. They're incurring the brunt of the strain here. So I would say you're probably looking at the rest of those companies, watching very, very closely and looking to be fast followers. Facebook's going to be spending a ton of resources on this, and whatever happens to the Facebook project, the Libra Association, and Libra, it's paving the way, or it's at least showing the open paths from a regulatory perspective. So from the other FANGs, this is positive for them because it's going to give them time to gear up for their own launch, if in fact they do decide to launch one, and know where to tread and know where the landmines are, because Facebook is first mover here. So that's what I think is interesting.
So do you guys do tax compliance for other jurisdictions, or is it strictly U.S. today?
Yeah, any jurisdiction. So when we think about tax compliance, it is it's not at a local level. It's more that we will do the processing required to get you to arrive at what your capital gain or loss is. And then there will be a local percentage applied to that, and that's not really that difficult to do. So for instance, however much you make or lose on crypto is, your profit and loss is the same in the US as it would be in the UK, but the percentage rate applied to that capital gain or loss is just going to be different. Now there's some different nuances when it comes to FIFO, first in, first out, or LIFO, last in, first out, and different countries may have different requirements around that, but we don't get into the business of applying local tax requirements. Other companies do that, and we've partnered with other companies that are in the business of actually doing the tax filing and applying the local laws. We just are basically a data processor, and so we'll take all the transactions in, we'll crunch the numbers, here's your capital gain and loss based on different methodologies, and then it's up to some other party, if not the user themselves, to write that in on their tax forms.
So as you look at Facebook and what they're trying to do with Libra, obviously we assume that the general laws will still apply here. How could they comply with what the IRS has said or stipulated that we need to do with cryptocurrencies? Yeah,
so they do actually say a couple of things publicly about this, and they acknowledge, according to my readings, that the Libra coin will be a capital asset and therefore will be subject to capital gains and losses. So in that regard, it's really no different from stock equities, and it's no different from Bitcoin either. You will have to calculate a cost basis upon acquisition, and you'll have to calculate the fair market value upon a disposal, and the difference between those two things will be a capital gain or loss that goes on your tax return. So it's not necessarily new territory, and it will fall into really the same same paradigm as capital gains and losses for other assets, like even Bitcoin itself.
Interesting. I guess as you look at what Facebook's doing, do you think that they're taking on too much risk with Libra, just in terms of, I think we've seen with Bitcoin, it's an open source network, right? You can't really control what people are going to be doing with this currency, or maybe you can, maybe there's, I guess how do you look at that, having seen the emergence of Bitcoin as an open source?
It's not for me to say whether or not they're taking on too much risk. I mean, that's Mark Zuckerberg, the board's agenda to determine what their risk appetite is.
Would you say it is a risky project?
It's super risky, but it's not like they depend on the success of Libra to still have a very large ad business. So it's not too risky, and if there is an opportunity to turn their reputation around and become a privacy company, and if you've read some of Mark Zuckerberg's blog posts, he is setting an agenda to become a more privacy-focused company. If they pull this off, the Libra Association, if they are able to create a next-generation global currency, well, then they've taken this opportunity and turned it into a positive. That's not going to be easy, but it's certainly ambitious, and I have to say I got to respect that ambition, because that's big and bold. So that's the way I see it.
Interesting. I guess when you think about Facebook's currency, you said that there were situations in which you would use that. Maybe you got some free Libra, you're going to spend it. How do you feel about Facebook offering financial services products, though?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's not clear to me whether or not they want to offer the financial services themselves, or if they're opening up a network in which other players can offer financial services, and so you do see custodians on the initial group of 28 participants. You see custodians, that's a service provider, right? You see Visa, I think Visa and MasterCard. So they are, it to me appears, designing this thing in such a way where they aren't literally the ones providing the financial services. Facebook as the legal entity, they're creating a brand new platform in which traditional and new players can plug into the network. So it's more of the platform play than it is that they're trying to become their own bank. Now, there's the lines blur, so it's easy to see why this is sort of like Facebook now evolving into a bank, but not technically either. So we'll see.
I guess another question: what's a win for Facebook as they're going to these hearings? And we were looking at an industry participant. Are you rooting for Facebook's success here?
Oh, I'm totally agnostic, and I've always been that way for literally every participant in the industry. But what I do like to see is progress for the industry at large. So if the end result of this is that there are new clarifications from a regulatory front that allow for the tokenization of real-world asset classes, that's a win for me, that's a win for this industry. I think the world is a better place if we can tokenize things, make new forms of money where monies can compete against each other, and the velocity of money increases. So if we see clarity on the regulatory front and an avenue in which to do this successfully, that is going to be a positive thing. If there's a knee-jerk reaction from regulators that aren't comfortable with the Libra project and therefore are not comfortable with most or all other future crypto and blockchain-based projects, that's bad. So I'm actually, from an industry perspective, looking for Facebook to be successful, because that means other projects can be successful, not necessarily because I'm super excited about spending Libra token, but because I want to see blockchain-based projects succeed. I want to see the world's assets tokenize and the velocity of money to increase. And so that's where, again, similar to rising tides raise all ships. If Libra David Marcus and Mark Zuckerberg can be successful here, so can other people, and that's what I care about.
I guess you worry about the avenue and the precedent they set, though, because obviously Bitcoin didn't appear before Congress, didn't get approval. Does this create sort of maybe more control over the financial system, which is in some ways what Bitcoin is trying to circumvent?
It could certainly backfire. Yeah, there's a risk of that. And you have a spectrum of Bitcoin, which most or many of the Bitcoin proponents place a high value on anonymity / privacy, and then more corporate projects like Libra, for instance. And for the cohort that absolutely values pure decentralization and pure anonymity, this certainly is scary for them, because the regulators wrapping their hands around crypto projects. So I can understand the fear, but personally I'm not a pure crypto anarchist, and I don't believe in anonymity at all costs. I think there's an important balance between anonymity and privacy. So I know it ruffles the feathers of a lot of Bitcoin purists too, because they feel like it may be hurting that agenda. But I'm satisfied either way. To me, this is an inevitable evolution of the industry. Like it or not, one day one of the corporates was going to come out with their own coin, and so we'll see how it all plays out. And I'm not, on one side of on one side or another. I think there will be a natural evolution to all this, and we'll see how it plays out.
Do you think we're out of the phase where smart kid Vitalik Buterin can launch a coin? Is this the dawn of sort of like the corporate interest in cryptocurrencies, where maybe it's not so greenfields?
It's ebbing in that direction. Yeah, I mean, we've even seen where ICOs were easy to do, and now they're not ICOs anymore. There's a lot more scrutiny from the SEC on what kind of coin you can launch. So it's already been trending in that direction. And I don't think it means that absolutely, some smart person can't launch their own network. But to have a successful fundraise behind a project, those ICO days and the Ethereum days are kind of over.
Well, as we kind of wind down here, I'm curious, has your thesis on the industry changed because of Facebook? Do you think that we're going to reach mainstream adoption sooner? Where do you think we are sort of in the spectrum?
That's an easy yes for me, only for the mere fact that there will be crypto assets in more hands than ever before because of Libra. And it's as simple as that. So, yes.
And so do you think that means that your time horizon, I guess, where are we in the cryptocurrency experiment, right? That people love to compare to the internet, they love to make comparisons. Where has this accelerated our movement down that path in your estimation?
Yeah, and I don't think, I hesitate to use the internet analogy, so I'm not going to place us on like 1997, for instance.
Why do you like the internet analogy?
Oh, it's a pretty good one, but history rhymes. It never totally repeats itself, and this is totally uncharted territory. But yes, the basic question is, does this accelerate the time frame? I think it certainly does. Yep.
And that's just because of the sheer number of users.
The sheer number of users, and Congress and governments are going to need to have these types of meetings where they get to the bottom of whether or not they can understand crypto and whether or not it's regulatable. So this had to happen sooner or later with somebody. Better sooner rather than later, I think. Yeah.
I guess it's interesting, you think about it, it's, if 2 billion people get their hands on a Facebook cryptocurrency, maybe they'll go on to all other alternatives, but we've seen Facebook try with other payments methods before.
That's the way I see it. I mean, if I get a MasterCard credit card. That doesn't mean I'm only ever going to use MasterCards in the future. I'm just as happy to use Visa, or sometimes I'm happier to use American Express because I get better benefits sometimes. So what's cool here about currency competition is that it's still going to boil down to what financial benefits can you provide the end user. This is why this is probably all going to net out just fine for the end user, is because what's going to motivate them to one currency or another is how good it is for them financially. So the competition is good for them. Having a Facebook coin compete with the US dollar, compete with Bitcoin.
Well, not according to Facebook.
Oh, all right, you're right, but at the end of the day,
well, I guess how do you square that, right? That seems like, they're
these are still all options for the consumer, for the person who wants to hold value. Everything out there from Bitcoin to Libra to the US dollar is an option, and therefore, while they're not intending to compete, and sure, it's easy to say we don't, we aren't trying to compete with Bitcoin per se. People are going to store their value one place or another, or in a blend of places. But there's a X amount of value in the world. It's somewhat of a zero-sum game in that sense. So while they may not intend to go head-to-head, this is just a matter of where do you store your value.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most fascinating things that you said, was that we don't intend to compete with central banks, but how can you not when you're issuing money? That's essentially what. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can say that it's backed by that money itself is backed by a basket of assets, but.
Well, maybe in terms of value storage, since it's backed, it's not competing with those underlying currencies, but as a payment rail, it might compete, because I might still hold my value in dollars, but then if I use Libra as a payment rail, now we're starting to sort of slice up what it means to be a money, and maybe some forms of money are better at payments, some forms of money are better at value storage, some forms of money are better at stability, and now money doesn't have to be all of those things and get all of those things at once. Maybe certain types of currencies are actually superior in each one of those different categories. So we'll see.
Certainly evolution of the Darwinian competition that we've unleashed.
That's exactly what's happening with currency, and that's why I'm super excited about it, because evolution's good. Yeah.
Jake, appreciate you coming on. Where can people find out more about your product, Lukka, and yourself?
Yeah, Lukka.tech is our website.
Cool. All right, we'll be back after the break at 3 p.m. with our next guest. Stay tuned. We'll be talking about Facebook, cryptocurrency, and the conversation in Washington, D.C. We'll see you soon.